What's up, gamers? Dreamcastguy here, and today we're going to talk about the failure of PlayStation, because this is a topic specifically that subscribers have been asking me to kind of tear apart for the last couple months, because it seems like Sony, by their own admission, by their own leaks and financial reports and stuff like that, has kind of dug themselves into a hole. Their big budget projects like Spider-Man 2, which cost $300 million to make, or even something like God of War Ragnarok, these games are photorealistic, they win awards, they definitely sell consoles, but they've put themselves in a spot where that is not making enough for Sony to stay afloat. So PlayStation's been trying to do AAA live service games, stuff that is as expensive as their other stuff, but instead of being a single player experience that's narrative focused, that you buy and then you beat, they're trying to have stuff that keeps you logging in, that keeps you paying, and keeps you subscribing to like battle passes and stuff. And the early experiments with this have been a bit of a failure. But let me talk about this. Hi, hope you're having a great day. If you could please give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now, let's be clear, I don't think PlayStation is screwed in the short term. I think they've just found themselves in a rough position that they're trying to find out how to get out of. They are still releasing games. There is stuff that's coming out soon. Like, honestly, Astrobot looks absolutely fantastic. This is coming out in September. Like, PlayStation is still trying to innovate. They're still coming out with games, but it's clear that their big obsession is moving into the live service space. This is a report that literally came out 10 minutes ago when I was sort of setting up to film this video, and it's the most played games, the stuff that people are actually just logging in and spending cash on week to week to week. Now, this is worldwide. You can see that literally all the biggest games in the world are stuff that's free to play. Call of Duty HQ, Fortnite, Grand Theft Auto 5, which a lot of this is people playing GTA Online, but there is some stuff. You can see there's Elden Ring. First Descendant is a new big live service game. There's Destiny 2, Helldivers though. So, it's clear that everybody wants to try and find a way to get Fortnite bucks. Everybody wants to try and find a money printing machine, but that's not something you can just do. Sony basically said, okay, this is our new goal. We're going to make 12 live service games, but now they've pushed a bunch of those out. So now we're only going to get about 6 live service games, which still seems like an absolute huge amount of them. So we now have 3 of them. There's Destiny, they just got Helldivers 2, and now this weekend we had the beta for Concord. So I've seen a lot of people asking me to talk about this. Was Helldivers 2 a failure? Was it unsuccessful? Currently the player numbers are down to 22,000, which is still pretty high, but if you look at this over the course of its release, from release until now, you can see when it went from literally hundreds of thousands of concurrent players down to, what is that? That's like a 95% drop in players just on Steam. So I've seen people talking about the fact that it seems like Sony, if their direct objective, their direct stated goal is to try and find a way to make stuff that people are going to keep paying for, not just playing, but actually paying for, so it can help fund their other projects, this may have been unsuccessful, and I think it's going to end up costing them a lot. Like Helldivers 2, I do think Helldivers 2 has made its money back. I mean, there's a lot of numbers about the fact that they sold the game for $40. It sold 15 million copies. I mean, it made billions and billions of dollars, probably, especially because it was made by a relatively smaller studio. So people are basically discussing, okay, this does not seem ideal. Like right now, Sony said they want to have long-term revenue from ongoing games, and that's the issue. They can't seem to figure out how to make it work. Now, part of the reason I'm filming this now is I spent about 15 hours this weekend playing the next big PS5 game, which is Concord, another live service game. Now, I'm not going to say it's the worst game of all time. It's not broken or busted or boring, but it definitely doesn't feel unique. And I say this now as a person who's played it more than 99.9% of the population. I think getting kills is great, winning matches, unlocking cosmetics, stuff like that is fun, but it kind of just feels like off-brand Overwatch. And I do mean that as an insult, in that there are other games that have a lower price tag that do it just as good. If you're charging $40 for a game that will also have battle passes and microtransactions and stuff like that, even if they are just cosmetic only, I think it's going to reduce the amount of people that are playing it up front, obviously, right? So I'm curious to see how PlayStation perceives this. Like, people have been asking specifically, I've had people begging for my take on the fact that everybody is quitting Helldivers 2. I think this stuff inevitably always happens, you know? People aren't going to play any game forever and ever and ever, unless it is something like Fortnite or Counter-Strike. This stuff, I think, is not the biggest shock. I'm curious about Sony's perception of this drop-off. A 95% reduction of the player base is something that's on paper or just hearing it, clearly that is not a good deal. So I wonder, on the financial aspect, is this enough for Sony to be happy? This last couple months specifically, there has been a ton of layoffs at stuff like Microsoft closing their studios, Xbox studios like Tango and stuff getting shut down. But Sony's done layoffs as well. They laid off like 1,200 employees from all sorts of departments, including even stuff like Insomniac, which is one of their most profitable studios. It's starting to make me think, how is this actually going to work in the long term? PlayStation has always bet on big bangers. Recently, the person, this guy actually worked over at Japan Studio. This is probably the studio that people talk about the most when they reference Sony closures. And I think, honestly, people roast PlayStation for this a lot because now, in retrospect, it does seem like a huge mistake. Japan Studios made Gravity Rush. They made so much stuff. This is Puppeteer, Ape Escape, like... or so. A lot of these are things that Japan Studio just at least helped with a little bit. But after doing stuff like Gravity Rush, which was so incredibly cool, but didn't sell a lot, they shut it down. And he said, Sony, their goal was to make increasingly more high-budget games, and I wanted to go and make stuff that's tinier. My motive was to create original games. I feel I can do this without a massive budget. This allows me to express myself as well. By going independent, this allowed me to do that. From my time at Sony, I feel like I've accomplished what I want to do. So even by their own admissions, even by the discussions of big Sony developers, a lot of times they straight up say the goal is spend a lot, make a lot, right? So they're going to try and make it so they can spend hundreds of millions of dollars to get the biggest banger that's going to be winning awards, that's going to be charting tops, that's hopefully going to have crazy Super Bowl ads and sell more PS5s. But how does this work at the end of the road? I think I'm curious specifically about Sony's obsession with live service games. I don't think this is going to work out in a positive sense. I've talked about this now in multiple videos. PlayStation, I think what they do best is tight, contained single-player experiences. Uncharted, stuff like that. Things that have a cool story, that are great, that you beat it, you love it. Days Gone. Things like that you actually sit down, you buy, you love, you create fan art of it, and then they either make a sequel or make DLC or something like that. But Sony, they're not happy with that. Spider-Man has sold tens of millions of copies. Like, that's made a ton of cash. But these companies always want more. And I'm curious if trying to dump so much of that money that could have created the next big Uncharted game, trying to channel that instead into all these live service experiments that personally I think are going to fail, I'm concerned as to how this actually shakes out. My personal prediction, I'm making this right now on July 15th, 2024, I think pretty much all their live service games are going to fail. I think Helldivers 2 made enough. I think Concord is absolutely going to bomb. I think whatever the next chapter of Destiny is, because yes, that is technically a Sony first-party game, I just can't imagine it taking off the way that Sony managed to sort of handle Destiny 2 so far. I just think that everybody is chasing the Fortnite bucks, and it's going to lead to the death of a lot of good ideas going down the drain. I don't know. These are just some off-the-cuff thoughts because people have asked my take on it. And honestly, short and sweet, I am bleak. I am pessimistic that this will lead to anything other than less cool, weird, original ideas. But tell me your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And please keep dreaming. Less battle passes, more good games. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.